My son's hand was still sticky from finger paint when my marriage ended. Not metaphorically, not symbolically. Literally sticky. Tacky streaks of purple and orange smeared across his small fingers as he clutched the little construction paper craft he'd made that day. I can still smell the glue and washable paint on him. I can still hear the echo of kids laughing down the hallway, still see the laminated alphabet posters peeling slightly at the corners. I was standing in the cramped entryway of Noah's daycare, that narrow space where parents always bump into each other, juggling backpacks and lunchboxes, when my phone buzzed once in my pocket. Then twice, then again, 5, 6, 7 vibrations in a row. For a second, I didn't even look. I assumed it was work. It was always work. Some frantic engineer asking if I saw the new bug, or if I could hop on a quick call, even though they knew I was picking up my 4-year-old. I reached over, grabbed Noah's little rocket backpack from its hook, the one with the stitched-on name my mom had made before everything fell apart, and slung it over my shoulder. My mind was already shifting to dinner plans, bath time, bedtime stories. The routine. Then I pulled my phone out, and the entire routine of my life cracked in half. On the screen was the preview of the first few words of a long message. A very long message. From Leah, my wife. Leah, I'm moving to Spain with my lover. My vision tunneled. Spain. Lover. In the same sentence. For a moment, I almost thought I'd misread it. Maybe my phone auto-merged 2 notifications. Maybe I opened someone else's message by mistake. Maybe this was a glitch, a scam, a nightmare. But no. My thumb tapped the notification. The full message expanded across the screen like a confession dropped straight from a cliff. I'm moving to Spain with love. I emptied our savings. Good luck paying rent. The words weren't even angry. They weren't emotional. They were cold, flat, like someone writing a grocery list. I stared at the sentence as the sounds around me blurred together. Kids squealing, teachers calling names, shoes squeaking on linoleum. All of it suddenly underwater, muffled by the roaring in my ears. Spain. She was on her way to Spain, with someone else, and she had emptied our savings. Then came the rest of the message. Paragraph after paragraph, unemotional and self-centered, the kind of text that makes you realize the person typing it didn't wrestle with guilt. They didn't hesitate. They hit send with a steady hand. I can't live like this anymore. I need passion, excitement, a real life. I'm tired of being stuck in your boring routine with your boring job and your boring rules. I met someone. He understands me. He's in Barcelona. I've already left. By the time you read this, I'm on my way to the airport. I took what I deserve. You'll be fine. You always land on your feet. There was a smiley face at the end. A smiley face. Not even a mention of Noah. Not a single sentence acknowledging that she had a 4-year-old son who would wake up tomorrow and ask where Mommy was. No love, no guilt, no goodbye. Just, good luck paying rent. Daddy? The world snapped back into focus all at once. I looked down. Noah was staring up at me with his big brown eyes, the ones he got from me, blinking through the messy fringe of his hair. There was dried purple paint on his cheek, like a tiny badge of honor from a day well spent. He held up a piece of construction paper with a crooked handprint on it. Purple, his favorite color. Look, he said proudly. It's my turkey. We did hands. Ms. Angie says it's tradition. His little fingers curled instinctively around mine, and something inside my chest, something that had started to crumble, snapped itself back together like bone setting under pressure. I swallowed, forcing my voice to sound normal. Yeah, buddy, I said, the words thick in my throat. That's awesome. I love it. He grinned so big his ears wiggled. Behind him, Ms. Angie popped her head out of the classroom doorway. Bye, Noah, she called. See you tomorrow. Tomorrow. That word hit me harder than the entire message, because tomorrow still existed. Rent still existed. Groceries, daycare payments, electric bills, the stuffed dinosaur he couldn't sleep without, a 4-year-old who liked pancakes and hated socks and asked questions about the moon. There was no version of my life where tomorrow didn't include Noah. My wife had abandoned us both in a single text, but my son, he hadn't abandoned anything. I slid my phone into my pocket, shoved down the spiraling terror, and took a breath so deep it felt like it scraped my ribs from the inside. Come on, I said softly. Let's get you home. We walked out into the parking lot, the cold November air biting at our faces. The sky glowed orange and pink where the sun was collapsing behind the rooftops. Noah skipped beside me, humming some song he probably made up on the spot. I opened the back door of the car and helped him climb into his booster seat. Roar, he said, making a T-Rex claw as I buckled him in. I'm going to eat all the stars. Better save some for me, I murmured, brushing a leaf from his hair. I closed his door and leaned my forehead against the cold metal of the car. I wanted to scream. I wanted to punch the ground. I wanted to call Leah and ask, "What the hell is wrong with you?" But beneath the wave of fury, betrayal, humiliation, there was something quieter. A whisper. "She just abandoned your son by text." I straightened, unlocked my phone, opened our chat thread. The typing field blinked at me like a challenge. My thumbs hovered over the keyboard. I could say anything. I could type every curse I knew. I could demand explanations or threaten attorneys. Instead, I wrote 4 words. "Thanks for letting me know." I hit send. No rage, no pleading, no breakdown. A calm acknowledgement. The emotional equivalent of shutting a door with gentle precision. Then I pocketed the phone, walked around the car, and got in. On the drive home, Noah kicked his feet to the rhythm of a tune only he understood. His shoes tapped the back of my seat softly. "Daddy?" he asked, voice small and curious. "Yeah, buddy?" "Can we have pancakes for dinner?" he said. "Miss Angie says sometimes you can. It's called breakfast for dinner, and it's legal." "Legal, huh?" I said, a laugh slipping past the barricade around my heart. "Well, if it's legal, then yeah, we can do that." He cheered like he'd won a prize. I gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white, focusing on the road illuminated by the fading sun. She wanted me drowning. All she did was remind me how to swim. Our apartment was on the 2nd floor of a tired brick building with thin walls that rattled every time the neighbor slammed his door and a view of the parking lot where someone always seemed to be arguing on speakerphone. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't curated for Instagram. It wasn't the kind of place anyone would describe as aspirational, but it was ours. Or at least, it had been, until today. Noah burst inside ahead of me, kicking his shoes off in 2 different directions, dropping his little rocket-covered backpack by the door with a thud that echoed louder than it should have. He sprinted straight to his overflowing plastic tub of dinosaur toys, the one I'd spent 45 minutes organizing last night until it looked like a toy store shelf, only for him to turn it back into chaos in 4 seconds flat. I closed the door behind us, locked it, turned the deadbolt, then leaned my back against the cool wood. The silence hit me like a physical force, like a vacuum. Not quiet in the peaceful end-of-the-day way. Quiet in the someone is missing way. Quiet in the someone ripped the oxygen out of this home way. The silence where Leah's presence used to be, her loud footsteps, her bags tossed haphazardly onto counters, her perfume that lingered too long in hallways, had never felt so loud. It's funny how absence can make more noise than presence. I stood there for a long moment, the kind of moment that stretches and warps time, the kind where you suddenly hear your own heartbeat louder than anything else. Because the truth was, I'd noticed her drifting long before she said the word Spain. I'm a lot of things. Quiet, routine-driven, predictable in ways she used to praise and then eventually mocked. But I'm not stupid, and I'm not blind. I'd watched her slip away from me inch by inch, like sand through fingers. Slow at first, so slow you don't realize you're losing the whole thing until your palm is empty. There were signs, there are always signs. The late nights at yoga that never made her sweaty, never made her hair frizzy, never gave her that flushed, breathless glow people get after actually working out. The fancy new lingerie packages that would arrive just because, lacy sets that never made an appearance in our bedroom, never hinted at wanting to be seen. The new perfume she'd spritz a little too eagerly before leaving the house, one that didn't smell like me or us or home. It smelled like someone reinventing themselves for an audience I wasn't invited to meet. The secretive little smile when her phone buzzed, the way she'd tilt the screen away from me, as if my eyes were landmines she had to avoid, the sudden coldness, like she'd replaced warmth with glass, sharp, reflective, dangerous to touch, and the contempt. God, the contempt, the increasing annoyance at everything I was and everything we had built together. "You're so boring, Ethan," she would say, tossing her hair like she was shaking off dust. "You never want to do anything spontaneous." "I have a job," I'd remind her. "We have a kid, Leah. Someone has to think about daycare pickup and deadlines and health insurance." "You always hide behind that," she'd snap. "No, you're scared of living, that's all." No matter how careful I was, no matter how gently I tried to approach problems, no matter how many compromises I tried to offer, it was never enough. I had thought it was a phase, a rough patch, a restless period she'd grow out of, the way some people cut their hair or buy new clothes when they feel stuck. I never imagined the phase would involve an international flight, a stranger named Love, and the swift detonation of the life we'd spent years building. I pushed off the door. My legs felt oddly heavy, like they belonged to someone else, like I was piloting them from far away. In the kitchen, I reached for the familiar: eggs, flour, milk, The ingredients of stability? Comfort. Something normal when absolutely nothing felt normal. My hands moved on their own. Crack, whisk, pour, flip. The movements were muscle memory, like the body's attempt to rescue the mind from drowning. Meanwhile, my brain, the part of me Leah always accused of being too logical, too strategic, too cold, started calculating everything at once. The joint savings account, the emergency fund, the rent due next week, the daycare payment, groceries, utilities, legal implications, account freezes, bank transfers, possible fraud flags, custody, documentation, everything. It was like 1,000 tabs opened in my head, all running at once. I replayed the notification I'd seen minutes after Leah's text. Large withdrawal alert. 42,760.13. The entire emergency fund we'd spent years building, drained in minutes, gone in a single wire, a digital heist, executed with the casual cruelty of someone unplugging a lamp. What she didn't know, what she had never cared to ask about, was that not all of my preparedness had gone into accounts with both our names on them. I'm a software engineer. I write code professionally. I troubleshoot disasters for a living. People like me think in layers, in contingencies, in redundancy. We build fallback systems for fallback systems, safety nets for safety nets. Not because we expect disaster, but because we recognize it's always a possibility. Leah had full access to our joint checking and joint savings. That was the system, the plan, the trust and transparency philosophy she loved to preach when it suited her. But the day Noah was born, the day I held his small, squished face and felt something ancient and primal click into place, a voice deep inside me whispered, "Don't put your entire future in a basket someone else might drop." So I opened a second account in my name only, a personal emergency account. Not to hide money from Leah, not to control her, not to play financial games, to protect Noah, to make sure that if someone nuked the shared account, whether by accident or malice, there would still be a lifeline for the little human sleeping in my arms. Whenever I got a bonus, a raise, overtime, or freelance payment, I'd siphon off a little before moving the rest into the joint pot. Nothing dramatic, nothing suspicious, just enough. Enough to matter now when the person I had trusted most had chosen to betray us both. Paranoid, Leah had once called me when she caught me setting up a new backup system at work. Prepared, I corrected. She rolled her eyes. Prepared. The word that once annoyed her so much was now the only reason Noah and I weren't about to get evicted. I flipped the pancake just as Noah climbed onto his chair at the table. "Dino pancakes?" he asked hopefully. "Dino pancakes," I confirmed. He cheered and started banging his fork on the table like a Viking demanding food. For a moment, the absurdity of it softened something inside me. When his plate was in front of him, syrup glistening on the little dinosaur-shaped pancakes, I grabbed my laptop and opened our banking app. Joint savings, $0. Joint checking, $23.47. My chest tightened. Then I clicked on my emergency account. The number sat there calmly, solid, steady, a quiet. I've got you from a past version of myself who had been preparing for exactly this moment without knowing it. I exhaled, a deep, shaking breath. Relief and fury collided like two storm fronts inside my chest. She had tried to sink us, and in the process, she had proven exactly why I had needed to build a life raft she didn't have the power to burn. I quietly moved money. 3 months of rent, paid in advance. Daycare for Noah, paid ahead. Utilities on auto debit from the emergency account. Groceries budgeted. Credit card payments rescheduled. Everything routed away from her reach. Lines of code in my brain transformed into lines of transactions on the screen. "Daddy?" Noah asked, licking syrup off his fingers. "Can I have more syrup? But not too much, or my teeth will fall out. Ms. Angie says sugar is consequential." I poured a little extra. "Ms. Angie is right. Sugar is very consequential. But you'll be okay if we brush your teeth like superheroes later." He nodded solemnly. While he ate, I opened my email. Subject: Emergency leave request. My manager, Steve, was a kind guy. Exhausted, stressed, dad of twins, but kind. I'd seen him duck out of meetings when his wife texted that one of the kids had a fever. I typed quickly, "Steve, I know this is sudden, but Leah left this afternoon. She took our savings and flew out of the country without notice. I'm now the sole caretaker for Noah and need to handle immediate legal and logistical issues, custody, housing, etc. I'd like to request emergency leave for the next week or two. I'll document my tickets and hand them off ASAP. Thanks for understanding. Ethan." I hit send before the second guessing could poison the message. Then I called the bank. The phone rang. Noah hummed to himself. The TV played a cartoon dinosaur show he'd watched 50 times. "Thank you for calling Westline Bank. A crisp, friendly voice said, "This is Angela. How can I help you today?" "My name is Ethan Cole," I said. "I need to report an unauthorized transfer from my joint account." Her tone shifted immediately, still polite, but sharper. "I'm sorry to hear that, Mr. Cole. Can you tell me what happened?" I read the details from the banking app. The timestamps, the destination of the transfer, the amount. "It appears," she said after a moment, "that a full withdrawal was made by one of the listed account owners. Normally that's considered authorized, but depending on the circumstances—" "She used my login," I said, voice tightening. "She initiated a wire to an overseas account without my consent. Then she texted me saying, 'I emptied our savings. Good luck paying rent.' That is, not authorized." Angela paused. See?" she said, choosing her words like she was picking up glass. "Because this involves a joint account, but also potential fraud and misuse of credentials, I can escalate it to our compliance department. If the receiving bank hasn't fully processed it, we may be able to freeze the funds. It's not guaranteed, but it's possible." "Do it," I said. "Please." "I'll mark it urgent," she said. "Expect follow-up messages shortly." I thanked her, hung up, closed my eyes for a moment. There was still a chance. A small one, a fragile one, but a chance. Next, a lawyer. I Googled family law attorney emergency custody abandonment financial abuse. The list that popped up was predictable. Half sharks, half saints. I picked the one with the simplest website, the fewest buzzwords, the most real-looking client reviews. "Marisol Vega, family law and custody specialization," her receptionist answered. When I explained the situation, the woman on the line inhaled sharply. "Can you come in tomorrow morning at 9?" she asked. "One of her clients canceled. You're in luck. She's the best with cases involving abandonment." "Yes," I said instantly. "I'll be there." The rest of the night unfolded like a play I was performing in from a distance. Bath, pajamas, bedtime story, the very hungry dinosaur, Noah's current favorite, toothbrushing, tucking in. "Where's Mommy?" Noah asked quietly as I pulled the blankets up to his chin. My heart squeezed like a fist. "She had to go on a trip," I said. "It's just going to be you and me for a while, okay?" He frowned, confused. "She forgot my goodnight hug?" I swallowed. "I'll give you two," I said softly. "One from me, one from her." He nodded, satisfied with the math of love. "Infinity," I whispered, kissing his forehead twice. "Infinity times 2, he murmured, clutching his stuffed T-Rex. He drifted off. When his breathing deepened, I stepped into the hallway and leaned against the wall. That was when the weight finally hit me. Not dramatically, not explosively. Just a slow, crushing heaviness that pressed into my chest and stole the warmth from my limbs. I walked back to the living room and lowered myself onto the couch. Then I bent forward, elbows on my knees, and let my face fall into my hands. I didn't cry loudly. I didn't rage or punch the couch or shout curses. I just broke quietly. Quiet like a man who had carried the structure of an entire family on his shoulders for years and finally felt one of the beams splinter beneath him. Quiet like a man who had believed he'd built a life with someone, only to realize she'd been carving her exit route the whole time. Quiet like someone who had not only been betrayed as a husband, but as a father. The betrayal was one thing, but the abandonment of Noah? That was a different kind of pain. One with no name, one that burrowed deep. I looked at the mess around me. The abandoned toys, the dishes in the sink, the drawings on the fridge, the shoes by the door, and felt something inside me shift. Not break, not collapse. Shift. This wasn't just about heartbreak or money or betrayal anymore. This was about survival, about strategy, about doing right by the one person who depended on me completely. And I knew, in that quiet devastation, exactly what Leah expected of me. She expected a storm, a meltdown, chaos, desperation, crying voicemails, begging, a man unraveling so thoroughly that he couldn't think straight long enough to protect his own child. But I'm not that man. I deal with emergencies for a living, production outages, security breaches, catastrophes in code that crash systems and threaten millions in losses. In those moments, my mind sharpens. My heartbeat steadies. The noise falls away. Tonight, that same part of me, the crisis manager, the problem solver, the strategist, came online with brutal clarity. Assess, stabilize, execute. I picked up my phone, opened Leah's thread, saw her final message hovering like a wasp waiting to sting again. Moving to Spain with love. I emptied our savings. Good luck paying rent. I scrolled up to my earlier response. Just 4 words. Thanks for letting me know. calm, controlled, unshaken on the surface, even as the storm churned beneath. She expected a hurricane. I gave her still water, and still water is where things sink the fastest. Leah had always been obsessed with Europe. Back when we were just two broke 20-somethings sharing cheap takeout on my hand-me-down couch, she'd scroll through Instagram and travel blogs, eyes shining in the blue-white glow of her screen. Cobblestone streets, narrow alleys, cafes with tiny round tables and crooked chairs, cathedrals that looked like they'd been carved by giants with too much time. "Can you imagine just leaving?" she'd say, zooming in on a picture of some sun-bleached balcony covered in potted plants. Dropping everything and starting fresh in a place like that? No alarm clocks, no deadlines, no boring suburb, just life. I'd lean over, look at the same picture, and see spotty Wi-Fi and a lack of outlets. "Sure," I'd say, "as long as they have good internet and decent health care." She'd shove my shoulder and roll her eyes. "You're such a nerd," she'd laugh. "You'd probably move to Paris and spend all your time looking for a co-working space." It was always a joke, a fantasy, some far-off someday dream we could toss around at midnight without it ever touching real life. But somewhere along the years, someday stopped being theoretical for her. Someday turned into, "Why not now?" And "Why not now?" turned into, "I deserve this. I'm meant for more than this small life." From what I could piece together afterward, through fragments from her social media, a few bitter confessions from people who'd known more than they'd told me at the time, and the digital trail she hadn't quite erased, her plan had been painfully simple in her head. Take the money, take the escape hatch, take the fantasy man. She'd met him in some online travel community, a group full of people who posted sunset photos and long captions about following your heart and changing your reality. He was one of the loudest voices there, tan, tattooed, perpetually shirtless on beaches, always talking about living authentically and refusing to be tied down by systems. His real name was something aggressively ordinary. His username was what mattered, Love in Barcelona. When she first mentioned the group to me, it sounded harmless. People share pictures, hype each other up, dream about trips they'll never take. Standard internet stuff. Then she started dropping his name more. "Love says the best time to visit Spain is in the fall," she'd mention offhandedly while chopping vegetables. "Love says most people never chase their dreams because they're addicted to comfort. Love says Americans don't understand joy." I'd be standing there, rinsing dishes, thinking, why is some guy named Love giving my wife life philosophy? But whenever I teased her, she turned it into a joke. "It's just his username, Ethan," she'd say. "He's a free spirit, not a cult leader. Relax." The first time she told me she was thinking about learning Spanish because it's sexy, I'd laughed. "Go for it," I said. "Maybe you can finally order something at that Mexican place without panicking and pointing at the menu." Another phase, I thought, like the aerial yoga, like the raw food kick that lasted 3 weeks before she ordered a pizza. Leah collected phases the way other people collected fridge magnets, but this one sank deeper, stayed longer, started changing things. Suddenly her phone was always face down. Suddenly our conversations were shorter. Suddenly my existence, which she'd once called solid and safe, became small and stifling. The morning she left, she kissed Noah on the forehead and told him she was going to the grocery store. That's what the daycare told me later. She dropped him off just like any other day, hair done, makeup flawless, smile bright and breezy. "See you later, buddy," she'd said. Then she got in the car, drove past the grocery store, past the exit to our neighborhood, and headed straight for the airport with 2 suitcases and the remainder of what we'd spent years saving. No goodbye note on the counter, no conversation, no warning, just a text message sent hours later while I was signing our son out of daycare. By the time I was sitting across from Marisol Vega in a small office with degrees on the wall and a water cooler in the corner, Leah was already somewhere over the Atlantic, chasing a life she'd decided we were holding her back from. Marisol looked like the kind of person life didn't easily push around. Late 40s, maybe. Latina. Dark hair pulled back in a clean twist. A face that could soften in empathy 1 second and harden into something like steel the next. She wore simple hoop earrings and a navy blazer, and when she focused on you, it felt like being scanned by a very precise, very expensive machine. She listened. Really listened. No impatient glances at the clock. No fake sympathy noises. Just a pen moving silently over a legal pad as I spilled out the story. I told her about the text, about the bank notification, about the joint account, about my emergency one, about the daycare, about Noah asleep in his bed while his mother followed a username across the ocean. I told her about Leah's growing contempt, her accusations, her obsession with living fully and not wasting time. The way she'd acted, like being a mother and having a mortgage, were shackles someone else had locked on her. When I ran out of words, a heavy silence settled between us. Marisol sat back in her chair, tapped the bottom of her pen against the paper once. "Okay," she said finally, "just that. Calm, grounded, not overwhelmed, not shocked, just processing. First," she added, her voice softening, "I'm sorry. This is brutal. Not just because she left, but because of how she did it. That kind of abandonment leaves marks." A lump rose in my throat. I swallowed it down. "How bad is this? Legally, I mean," I asked. "For Noah. For everything." She pulled the legal pad closer and started marking out 3 neat bullet points. "Bad," she said. "For her." Then she lifted her eyes to mine. "For you and Noah. This gives us leverage." "How?" I asked, leaning in. She ticked the bullets with her pen as she spoke. "Unilateral removal of marital funds," she began. "She drained your joint savings in secret, using your login. That's a serious issue. It might not be straightforward theft in the criminal sense, but it's a huge strike against her in any divorce or custody proceeding. Judges are getting more educated about this." She wrote another line. "Intentional abandonment of a minor child," she continued. "She left the country without him, didn't arrange care, didn't discuss shared custody. She simply dropped him at daycare and vanished." Line 3. Cross-border complications and potential fraud. She didn't just move out. She left the country immediately after draining the account. That becomes crucial context. At best, it's reckless. At worst, it's part of a pattern of financial abuse. She glanced up when she saw my confusion. "Financial abuse," she repeated. "When one partner uses money to control or harm the other, draining accounts, hiding funds, sabotaging stability. Historically, courts overlooked it. Now they're starting to understand it's as serious as other forms of abuse." The word abuse sat uncomfortably in my stomach. I'd always thought that word belonged to other stories. Stories with bruises you could see, shouting you could hear through walls, holes punched in drywall. But the way Leah had pulled the rug out from under us, the money, the timing, the text, felt like she'd put her hands around our financial throat and squeezed. So what do we do?" I asked. Marisol straightened the pad, shifting gears into strategy mode. "We move fast," she said. "We do 3 things immediately." She raised one finger. 1. We file for emergency temporary custody of Noah. We make it clear he stays with you. We use her behavior, leaving the country without him, no plan, no contact, to argue she's demonstrated a lack of commitment to his well-being. A second finger. 2. We file for a temporary restraining order that prevents her from accessing any remaining joint funds, opening new lines of credit in your name, or attempting to remove Noah from the state if she tries to sweep back in and play mom when it suits her narrative. A third. 3. We gather everything. Screenshots of her messages. The text where she admits to emptying the savings, bank records showing the withdrawal and your separate account, daycare statements confirming she dropped him off and didn't return. Your notes from the bank call. We build a timeline. Judges love timelines. And her being in Spain? I asked. Does that help? Hurt? I don't know how it plays into anything. It helps you, Marisol said without hesitation. She didn't stay nearby to try to share custody or attend mediation. She didn't move out and then file for divorce while offering a co-parenting plan. She didn't even take Noah and then call to negotiate. She left the country without her child. That sends a very loud message about where you rank on her list of priorities. She paused. And where Noah ranks, she added. Judges are parents and grandparents too. They understand what that means. My stomach nodded. What about the money? I asked. Can I get it back? Or is it just gone? That part is trickier, she admitted. But since you already contacted the bank and flagged the transfer, their fraud and compliance departments will do their thing. If the funds are still in transit or haven't cleared, there's a decent chance they can freeze them. Even if they don't fully reverse it, the attempted withdrawal becomes part of the financial picture in the divorce. It will matter. Divorce, I repeated, the word feeling both foreign and inevitable. Marisol's gaze softened. She declared it with that text, she said quietly. The law is just formalizing what she already did. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed on the table. For a heartbeat, I thought, Leah. Another message. Another bomb. But the notification came from Westline Bank. My pulse climbed as I opened it. Suspicious activity detected. Your joint account is temporarily restricted pending review. Another email landed right after. International transfer on hold pending verification. A slow, cold breath left my chest. I turned the screen toward Marisol. She read it. And for the first time since I'd walked into her office, she smiled in a way that looked a little dangerous. "Good," she said. "The net is tightening." Across an ocean, in an airport whose name she'd rehearsed saying in the bathroom mirror, Leah stepped off a plane and into the bright, echoing chaos of arrivals. The overhead signs were in Spanish and Catalan. The air smelled like coffee, perfume, and jet fuel. People flowed around her in every direction. Families, solo backpackers, business travelers with sleek luggage that cost more than our monthly rent. She adjusted the strap of her carry-on and rolled her suitcases through the crowd, her heart pounding with a mix of exhaustion and adrenaline. The flight had been long, uncomfortable, too much time to think. She'd tried to sleep, but her brain and the cabin lights had refused to cooperate. She'd watched half of 3 different movies and remembered none of them. She'd accepted every free drink the attendant offered and still felt stone-cold sober. She'd opened her phone mid-flight, stared at the last photo of Noah she'd taken, him laughing in the bathtub, hair full of bubbles, then shut it off again. He'll be fine, she told herself for the 1000th time. Ethan is a good dad. He lives for that kid. He's the stable one. This will force him to grow, to get out of his comfort zone, to stop being so small. She stacked justifications like sandbags against the rising guilt. At the arrivals gate, he was waiting. Love in Barcelona. The man behind the username. In person, he looked exactly like his photos, which should have been a red flag on its own. Reality is rarely that high resolution. Tan skin, tattoos curling around his forearms, white t-shirt that fit just tightly enough to suggest working out was part of his personal brand, hair styled to look effortlessly messy, which always takes the most effort. When he spotted her, his face broke into a practiced grin. "Leah," he said, opening his arms wide as if they'd known each other for years instead of a handful of video calls and months of late-night chats. She walked into the hug and let herself collapse into the fantasy. For a moment, just a moment, the rest of her life blurred out. No daycare, no rent, no tired apartment, no husband whose steadiness had started to feel like a weight instead of an anchor. Just the rush of being wanted. Chosen, picked. "You made it," he murmured into her hair. "Welcome to Barcelona, Hermosa." Her chest loosened. This is it, she thought. This is the moment my life changes. They took a taxi from the airport, her forehead pressed against the glass as the city unspooled outside. Narrow streets lined with old buildings breathing out their age. Balconies draped in plants. Laundry flapping from windows like flags. Scooters weaving through traffic. Tiny cafes with 2 tables wedged between doorways. In the distance, a sliver of ocean glinting under the afternoon light. She watched it all and told herself, I was right. I was right to come. I was right to leave. They reached his apartment. Top floor, no elevator, white walls, mismatched furniture that looked intentionally eclectic. He wasn't rich, but the place had character. Plants, posters, a chipped mug collection. It felt like the curated version of Free Spirit she'd fallen for online. He poured her a glass of red wine, the good kind that stained her lips and warmed her stomach. I'm just going to check the transfer and book us somewhere nice for dinner, she said, trying to keep her voice light even though her heart was beating too fast. She sat on his couch, opened her bag, pulled out her phone, and thumbed open the banking app with the simple expectation that the world would cooperate. Instead of numbers, she was greeted with a message. Your account is temporarily under review. Please contact the fraud department. She frowned, tried again, backed out, logged in, re-entered her password. Same message. Her throat tightened. She clicked on the joint account she'd emptied, the one she'd watched drain in a rush of adrenaline back in the States. It didn't show a reassuring new total in the other bank. It showed, transfer pending, hold in place. A cold line drew itself down her spine. What the hell, she whispered. Everything good? Love called from the kitchen, clinking glasses. Yeah, she shot back, forcing cheer into her voice. Bank app is being weird. She backed out and checked her personal account instead. A new alert greeted her. Multiple failed login attempts from new location detected. For your security, your access has been restricted. Please verify your identity. Her heartbeat drummed in her ears. She tried one of her credit cards to calm herself down. Maybe she'd just use that until the bank sorted itself out. Payment declined. She tried another. Declined. The room seemed to tilt. No, she muttered. No. Her phone buzzed with a new email notification. She opened it. Dear Ms. Cole, due to recently reported unauthorized activity on your joint account, as well as international access from a new location, we have placed a temporary hold on certain services pending identity verification and fraud review. Her vision blurred. She dialed the fraud department. The call took forever to connect. a dreadful loop of tinny jazz and repeated assurances that your call is important to us. "Thank you for calling Westline Bank Fraud Department," a woman finally said. "This is Danielle. How can I help you today?" "Oh, you froze my account," Leah snapped, heat rushing to her face. "I'm in another country. I can't access my money. You need to fix this right now." "I'm sorry to hear that you're experiencing trouble, ma'am," Danielle said. "For your security, I'll need to verify—" "My husband reported something, didn't he?" Leah interrupted. "He's lying. He's trying to punish me. That money is mine, too. You can't just take it away." There was a brief pause on the other end. "I can't discuss another customer's specific actions with you," the agent said carefully. "What I can tell you is that when an account owner reports suspicious activity, and we detect unusual transfer patterns and international login attempts from a new location, we are required by federal law to place a temporary hold on certain transactions while we investigate." "I'm not some criminal," Leah spat. "I moved, people move. That's not fraud. That's life." "I understand this is frustrating," Danielle replied, in the tone of someone who definitely did understand but also had heard every possible version of it 10 times that week. "However, we must follow our security protocols. You will receive updates via email. In the meantime, I recommend you do not attempt further large transfers or new logins from unfamiliar devices." Leah hung up mid-script. Her chest heaved. Her heart pounded so hard she could feel it in her teeth. "Everything okay?" Love asked, appearing in the doorway, glass in hand. Her mind did rapid, panicked math. Joint account, frozen. Her cards, declining. Her location, another country. Cash on hand, a few €100 she'd exchanged at the airport, just in case. "This is temporary," she told herself. "They'll fix it. It's my money. They have to fix it." Her phone buzzed again. This time the message wasn't from the bank. It was from me. "You transferred funds illegally. Bank compliance flagged it automatically. Good luck." It wasn't the whole truth. I'd made the call that set everything in motion. Nothing about this was fully automatic. But she didn't know that. And I knew exactly how it would land. Like the universe itself had turned against her. "Who's that?" Love asked, nodding at her phone. She stared at the message, the words blurring as anger and dread crashed together. "My husband," she said finally. The word felt old-fashioned now, like something from a past life. "He's trying to punish me. He told the bank lies. They froze my accounts." Love's eyebrows lifted almost imperceptibly. "So you don't have access to anything right now?" he asked. "I will," she snapped. "They're just overreacting. It's my account, my money. They can't just lock me out forever. I'll clear it up." He shifted his weight, that practiced easy confidence hitching for the first time. "Look, I can cover some things for a bit," he said, "but I'm not like rolling in cash either. This city isn't cheap, and I wasn't expecting to support someone right away." The words hit her harder than she expected. "You told me we'd build a life together," she said, her voice cracking at the edges. "You said you wanted me here. You said—" "I said we'd see what happens," he corrected, the warmth draining from his tone. "Long-distance vibes and reality are different things, Leah. Let's just take a breath, yeah?" In that moment, a hairline fracture appeared in the fantasy she'd built. Through it, for the first time in days, something else seeped in. An image of Noah in his dinosaur pajamas, standing at the window and asking when Mommy was coming home. She pushed it away like swatting a fly. She wasn't ready to face it. Not here, not now. She spent 2 nights in Love's apartment. The first night, she clung to the dream with both hands, determined to prove to herself that this had been worth it. They drank, they laughed, they kissed. She talked too loudly and too fast, trying to drown out the tiny voice in her head whispering, "What have you done?" The second night, she noticed him checking his phone more, stepping onto the balcony to answer messages, scrolling instead of listening when she spoke. She laughed a little too forcefully at his jokes, told herself he was just tired, or nervous, or overwhelmed. On the third morning, he cleared his throat and said, "So, listen." She knew what was coming before he finished the sentence. "I think maybe it would be better," he said, not meeting her eyes, "if you got a place of your own for a bit. Just while you sort out the money stuff. My landlord is kind of strict about guests, and, you know." She stared at him. "No," she said, a little too fast. "No, you said—" "I said a lot of poetic stuff online," he cut in, sounding almost embarrassed. "And I meant it. But this is different. I didn't think you'd just show up with no safety net." Her throat constricted. "I left my entire life," she whispered. "For you, for this." He lifted a shoulder in a half shrug that felt like a slap. "I didn't ask you to drain your accounts," he said. That was your choice. He gave her the name of a cheap hostel, wrote it on a scrap of paper like that made it helpful instead of humiliating. A few hours later, Leah was dragging her suitcases down a street that suddenly looked less like a romantic movie and more like what it was. A busy city where no one cared who she was or what she'd given up to be there. Her phone continued to spit out the same messages. Account under review. Please contact fraud department. We're working to resolve your issue. Do not attempt further activity. Somewhere on the other side of the ocean, the man she'd dismissed as boring was doing exactly what he'd always done. Looking at a broken system, finding the vulnerabilities, protecting what mattered, assess, stabilize, execute. Back home, my life shifted into a strange two-track existence. On one track, there was Noah. Breakfast, drop-offs, pickups, bedtime stories, laundry, trying to explain why Mommy wasn't there without tearing his world apart. On the other track, there was war. Marisol filed everything she said she would, and then some. Emergency temporary custody. A restraining order that didn't just cover physical approach, but also unauthorized digital access to our finances and Noah's records. A petition for full custody based on abandonment and financial abuse. We attached screenshots of Leah's messages. The "I emptied our savings, good luck paying rent" line glowed on the page like an admission. We attached bank statements, timestamps of the transfer, records of my call to fraud, email confirmations of the hold placed on the funds. We attached a letter from the daycare director detailing how Leah had dropped Noah off that morning, told him, "See you later," and then never returned. When you lay it all out in a folder, a person's choices look different than they did in their head. Leah called, and called, and called. The first few times, I let it go to voicemail. Her messages ranged from furious. "You had no right to freeze that account, Ethan. That money is mine too. You're such a control freak." To desperate. "I'm stuck here. I don't have enough for a ticket back. They won't release my card. Please, just send something. Think of Noah. Don't you want his mother to be okay?" To venomous. "You always loved playing the victim. Congratulations. Now you finally get to be the hero in your own little story. You're disgusting." I didn't respond to any of them. When she texted, "Do you even care that I might end up homeless here?" I typed out a dozen replies, sharp, bitter, all the things I wanted to spit back. Then I deleted them. The only text I sent, days into her spiral, was this: "I'm focused on Noah now." She didn't like that. "You're using him as an excuse," she wrote. "You're turning him against me." I looked over at my son, sitting on the floor in a nest of crayons and paper, drawing a dinosaur with a crown. I would never have to turn him against anyone. Kids chose their heroes based on who showed up. He looked up at me and smiled. "Daddy, look," he said. "King T-Rex. He steps on bad guys, but he's nice to puppies." "That sounds about right," I said. Marisol kept me updated on the legal front. "She's been served electronically," she told me one afternoon over the phone. "She's aware of the filings, and she knows she'll have to come back to the U.S. if she wants any chance at seeing Noah without issues." "Will she?" I asked. "Oh, she will," Marisol said. "The money issue may be enough. The bank is cooperating. But once she realizes her access to her child legally depends on showing up, she'll come." "And if she doesn't?" I asked quietly. "Then you'll still have custody," she said. "But let's cross that bridge if we get there." Every few days, I received updates from the bank. Fraud investigation ongoing, receiving bank contacted, funds partially recovered, pending claim. Leah, for her part, tried to weaponize pity. She emailed me at one point. "I'm staying in a hostel with 12 other people. I can't sleep. I'm scared. This isn't what I imagined. Please, Ethan, if you ever loved me, help me." I stared at the screen for a long time. I had loved her. Whatever else was true, that had been real once. But love wasn't a get-out-of-consequences-free card. She had stood in our kitchen months earlier, tossing her hair, saying things like, "I need more than this. I can't breathe in this life you've built." I'd taken her words seriously. I'd offered counseling, conversations, time. She'd chosen a plane ticket and a wire transfer instead. I forwarded the email to Marisol. "This goes into the file," she wrote back. "It shows remorse now, but also reinforces abandonment. Don't respond." A court date was set for the emergency custody hearing. Leah's return ticket, funded by some combination of the little cash she had and a partially unfrozen card, landed her back in the same city she'd sneered at as small. When she walked into the courthouse that morning, she looked like a ghost of herself. The tan she'd hoped to get in Spain hadn't materialized. The bags under her eyes were real, though. Her hair was pulled back messily, her clothes wrinkled. For a surreal moment, I remembered our wedding day, how she'd walked down the aisle in a white dress, eyes shining, everyone smiling. Now she walked down a hallway under fluorescent lights, clutching a folder, no bouquet in sight. Our eyes met. For a heartbeat, the anger drained, and something like grief flickered between us, for what we'd been, what we'd lost. Then she scowled. "I didn't think you'd actually fight back," she muttered as she passed me. I held her gaze. "You didn't think about Noah at all," I said quietly. She rolled her eyes and disappeared into her lawyer's conference room. Her attorney, as it turned out, was the kind of guy who wore a too shiny suit and spoke like he was on a daytime commercial for car accidents. In the courtroom, he tried to spin. "Your Honor," he said, gesturing grandly, "my client suffered a mental health crisis. She made impulsive decisions, yes, but she never intended to abandon her child permanently. She simply needed space, time to think. To frame this as abandonment is both cruel and inaccurate." Marisol stood smoothly. "Your Honor," she said, her voice even, "my client received a text message stating, and I quote, 'I'm moving to Spain with my lover. I emptied our savings. Good luck paying rent.'" There was no mention of Noah until she realized her access to him might be legally threatened. She drained their joint account, crossed international borders, and left the country without arranging care beyond the daycare pickup for that day. If that's not abandonment and financial abuse, I'm not sure what is. She held up a stack of papers. Exhibit A, the text messages. Exhibit B, bank records. Exhibit C, daycare statements. Exhibit D, the restraining order request. The judge, a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, scanned the documents. "Ms. Cole," she said, turning to Leah, "did you send this text?" Leah shifted. "Yes, but did you at any point inform Mr. Cole beforehand that you were leaving the country?" The judge continued. "No, but did you arrange for Noah's care beyond normal daycare hours before you left?" she asked. Leah's jaw clenched. "I knew Ethan would handle it," she said. "He always does. He's good at that stuff." "So you relied on the very stability you criticize him for," Marisol murmured under her breath, just loud enough for me to hear. The judge's gaze sharpened. "And the money," she said. "You withdrew the entirety of your joint savings into an account solely under your control?" "It was my money too," Leah snapped. "I contributed. You have a right to a fair division of marital assets in court," the judge cut in. "Not to unilaterally empty accounts and flee the country?" Leah flushed. "My client had a breakdown," her lawyer tried again. "She wasn't thinking clearly. She regrets her actions deeply." The judge raised a hand. "Regret does not erase impact," she said. "Mr. Cole has provided for Noah single-handedly since your departure, including prepaying rent and child care from an account you did not even know existed. He contacted the bank as soon as he discovered the withdrawals to prevent further harm. He immediately sought legal guidance. You, Ms. Cole, sought beaches and a boyfriend." There was a small, uncomfortable chuckle in the back rows that the judge shut down with a look. "This hearing is about temporary orders," she said. "I am granting Mr. Cole full temporary physical custody of Noah. You will have supervised visitation at a center the court will appoint once you have completed a parenting class and provided proof of stable housing and employment. We will revisit final custody and financial arrangements at the full hearing." Leah's mouth dropped open. "That's not fair," she said, voice wobbling. "He's turning everyone against me. He's painting this picture like I don't love my son. I just needed—" The judge's voice softened, but only slightly. "I don't doubt that you love your son," she said, "but love is not measured in feelings. It's measured in actions. And your actions, Ms. Cole, speak very loudly." She banged her gavel once. "Temporary orders so entered," she said. "Court is adjourned." As soon as the judge stood, Leah sank onto the bench. For a moment, she looked very small. Her lawyer started talking to her in urgent whispers. She rubbed at her eyes. I walked past, Marisol at my side. Leah looked up. "Ethan," she said, voice hoarse. "Please, tell them I'm not a monster. Tell them something?" I paused. I thought about the boy at home who still slept with a dinosaur tucked under his arm, the one who'd asked me last night, "Is Mommy mad at me?" I thought about the woman I'd married years ago, who danced in our living room in wool socks, laughing. I thought about the text in my phone. I emptied our savings. Good luck paying rent. "I'll never tell Noah you're a monster," I said quietly. "I'll tell him you're human. Humans make choices, some good, some not. The rest is up to you." Her eyes filled with tears. "Do you hate me?" she whispered. I hesitated. "I don't have the energy to hate you," I said. "I'm using everything I have to love him." I walked out into the sunlight holding that love in a firm grip. Life didn't magically become easy after that. There were still bills. Even with some of the savings eventually restored by the bank's investigation, there were legal fees, supervised visitation center costs, the endless quiet expenses of raising a child. I still worked. Once my emergency leave ended, I returned to my job, now with a more flexible arrangement. Steve, bless him, had responded to my original email with, "Take what you need. Family first. We'll cover." He meant it. I pushed my work hours into blocks that fit around daycare and visitation schedules. Early mornings, late nights after Noah went to bed, lots of asynchronous communication, lots of "I'll review this after bedtime" messages. The emergency account shrank slower now, stabilized by my income. On paper, I was a single dad software engineer with one decent savings account and a stack of ongoing legal proceedings. Inside, something had changed. Leah's departure had burned away a layer of fog I hadn't realized was there. I no longer woke up every day trying to balance one person's hunger for chaos with another's need for stability. My home was smaller than the one we'd once dreamed of, but it was peaceful. There were toys on the floor, sure, crayons under the couch. A permanent sticky spot no amount of mopping seemed to fix. But there was also laughter. Predictable routines, the kind of quiet Noah could grow in. Leah visited Noah at the supervision center every other weekend. I dropped him off and picked him up. The first time he clung to my leg. "I don't want to go," he whispered. "What if she leaves again?" I knelt and looked him in the eyes. "The rules are different now," I said gently. "She can't just go without telling anyone. There's a lady there whose job it is to help you and keep you safe while you visit. If you ever feel scared, you can tell her, and you can tell me. You don't have to pretend anything." He nodded, still uncertain. "Do I have to love her?" he asked quietly. The question broke something and built something in me at the same time. "You don't have to anything," I said. "You get to feel how you feel. It's okay if you're mad. It's okay if you're sad. It's okay if you're happy to see her. All of that is allowed. Loving someone doesn't mean you can't also be hurt by them." He didn't understand all of it, not at 4, but he understood enough. Over time, their visits became manageable. Leah tried, in stilted ways, coloring with him, asking about his favorite dinosaur, bringing little gifts. Sometimes she cried afterward. I could see the red in her eyes when Noah hugged her goodbye. I didn't gloat. The court eventually finalized our divorce. The judge, having reviewed months of evidence and behavior, granted full legal and physical custody to me, supervised visitation to Leah, with the option to expand to unsupervised only after a long list of conditions, restitution for the funds she'd taken, structured into a judgment that would follow her for years, a formal note in the record about her attempted financial abuse and abandonment. Walking out of the courthouse that day, the decree in my hand, I expected to feel triumphant. Instead, I felt clear. No more limbo. No more waiting for the other shoe to drop. Just a single path forward, with one small hand holding mine. Outside, the air was crisp. The courthouse steps felt less like a climb and more like a descent into a life I could actually live. Noah was with my mom that day. They'd made a banner that said "Congrats," even though he didn't know exactly what we were celebrating. When I walked into my mom's house, he ran at me full speed. "Daddy," he yelled. "Grandma let me have 2 cookies because she says special occasions. Is this a special cation?" "It is," I said, scooping him up. He peered at the papers in my other hand. "Is that homework?" he asked. "In a way," I said. "It's grown-up homework. It says that you and I are on the same team officially, always." He grinned. "We were already a team," he said. "We're Team Dinosaur Pancakes." "Best team name ever," I said. Later that afternoon, as we buckled into the car, Noah swung his feet against the seat. "Daddy," he asked, "can we get ice cream?" I paused. For so long, my reflex had been to say, maybe next time, to count dollars in my head, to weigh treats against looming bills. I'd prepaid rent, prepaid daycare, structured everything so we wouldn't be blindsided again. We weren't rich, not in any way the internet would recognize, but we had enough to say yes to small happiness without fear. "Yeah, buddy," I said, starting the car. "We can get ice cream." His face lit up like I'd offered him the moon. "Can I have sprinkles?" "You can have so many sprinkles," I said. "The sprinkle guy will beg you to stop." He laughed so hard he snorted. On the way to the ice cream shop, my phone buzzed once. An email from my bank. Fraud investigation concluded. Joint account restored to prior balance. I stared at the line for a second, then slid the phone back into my pocket. It wasn't triumph. It was symmetry. She had tried to empty us out. In the end, she was the one sitting on an empty balance sheet. We walked into the little ice cream parlor on the corner. It smelled like sugar and waffle cones and childhood. Noah pressed his face against the glass, considering the flavors with the seriousness of a general planning a campaign. Chocolate, he decided, with rainbow sprinkles and gummy bears and, that one. He pointed at a crushed cookie topping. Living dangerously, the teenager behind the counter said, scooping. I ordered a simple scoop of mint chocolate chip. We sat at a small table by the window. Noah immediately got ice cream on his nose. Hey, I said, you got a little? Dad, he said through a mouthful. This is the best special-cation ever. I smiled. He kicked his legs under the table, happy, present. It struck me then how close I'd come to losing this. If Leah had taken him instead of the savings, if she'd tried to drag him into that fantasy life. If I'd been slower to act, less prepared, less willing to fight. She had tried to run from responsibility. I had run toward my son. That made all the difference. Years from now, he might ask for the full story. He might want to know why his parents split the way they did, why his mother lives in a small apartment and sees him on structured weekends while his dad makes pancakes in a 2-bedroom with dinosaur decals on the wall. When that day comes, I'll tell him the truth, in pieces his heart can hold. I'll tell him that sometimes people confuse freedom with running away, that sometimes adults make choices that hurt other people because they're chasing a feeling, that love without responsibility isn't love, it's indulgence. And I'll tell him that the day his mother texted me from a departure lounge in some airport, thinking she'd detonated my life, I looked at his tiny hands and realized something simple and unshakable. My life wasn't in that account. It wasn't in the euros she'd hoped to spend or the beaches she'd hoped to walk. It was in the little boy in a rocket backpack who wanted dinosaur pancakes for dinner and believed me when I said I'd always be there. She thought she'd written an ending. All she did was give me a brutal, clear beginning. And from that day on, every choice I made was for one goal. Not to win, not to get even. To build a life where my son never had to wonder if he was the priority. She tried to run from responsibility. I ran toward my son. And that made all the difference.